call you should never answer. After a domestic violence arrest, the detectives are fishing for more evidence, and your phone is bait. In this video, I'm going to be exposing the truth about post-arrest investigations. My name is Veronica. I'm a domestic violence defense attorney here in California, and I help people put their cases behind them so that they can enjoy their lives and their freedom. I'm also the creator of a course called Defeat the DVRO, in which I teach you from start to finish everything you need to know to represent yourself at your restraining order hearing and win. So if in addition to dealing with an arrest, you are also served with a restraining order, get your free first class via the link down below. Cut. Okay, so let's jump right in. Now, here's the situation I'm talking about. You get arrested, and often there's not that much investigation for a domestic violence case. For murder cases, for example, they are probably going to bring witnesses down to the station, interview them immediately. They are going to always at least try to interview the suspect. It's going to be a big and immediate investigation. But for domestic violence cases, as you may have seen, usually that is not the case. They make an arrest very quickly. They write up a report, and usually a detective is not going to come out to the scene of a domestic violence case, unlike in murder cases. So what happens is that they send rookies out to investigate this domestic violence call, make an arrest, and then a detective sometimes will get involved. And if they look at the report and whatever evidence has been collected, and they see that there's not a whole lot there to go on, what they will often do for domestic violence cases is they try to get more evidence to beef up the police report. And how do they do that? If it were a murder case, maybe they would go and knock on doors, but for domestic violence cases, for less serious cases, what they will often do is try to conduct this interview over the phone. They call the alleged victim, they call the suspect, they call any other witnesses. Now, whether you are the suspect or whether you are the alleged victim and maybe you want charges dropped, you may be thinking, well, that's a good thing. I want a chance to explain my side. In fact, I'll call them myself. Maybe we've already put in calls to the police station. But talking to the police, when they call you, when they're investigating a domestic violence case, almost certainly is not going to help you and could really hurt you. So let's go through 5 scenarios so I can illustrate how these calls can go and how they can end up really backfiring. Example 1, Sarah and Mike got into an argument. Ultimately, Sarah ended up calling the police. The police came out and they arrested Mike. While the police were there, they asked Sarah if she wanted an emergency protective order. She didn't really think about it and she said yes. But once Mike is arrested, Sarah realizes she never wanted it to go this far. She's not sure about her future with Mike, but ultimately she just wants this whole thing to go away. And then she gets a call. Her phone says no caller ID. On the other end is a detective. Hello, Sarah? This is Detective Johnson. I'm just calling to follow up on your case. How have you been holding up? Oh, hi, Detective. I'm glad that you called. Look, this was all just a big misunderstanding. We're working it out. He even apologized to me. We apologized to each other because really it was more me than him. Oh, he apologized? Yeah, we met up, we talked things over, and we both apologized to each other. I never wanted things to get this far. Sarah, did you just say that you met up with Mike? Oh, I didn't think it was a big deal. We just met up to talk. I initiated it. I see. You do understand that there is an active protection order in place, right? Any contact is a violation. But it was just to talk. I'm the one who reached out to him. I don't want to get him in trouble. I just want to drop this whole thing. I understand, Sarah, but I have to report this. Mike's violation of the order is a serious matter. Victim admitted to suspect violating protective order. Suspect to be charged with additional offense of violating court order. Okay, so what happened here? It's obvious that Sarah meant well. Sarah's intention was to communicate to the detective that she did not want charges filed, but all that the detective hears and all that the detective is really listening for is that there was a possible additional crime committed. I mean, how these emergency protective orders work is that the police will ask the alleged victim at the time that they're making the arrest, do you want an emergency protective order? And sometimes the alleged victim will say yes just because they feel like if they don't say yes, then it makes it seem like they're lying. And sometimes they think, okay, well, if I don't want this emergency protective order anymore, then I can just throw it away. It doesn't really matter. It's just to protect me. And they have this perception, partly because of that initial question from the police, that they retain control over it. But even if the alleged victim contacts the suspect and the suspect responds, if there's an emergency protective order in place, that is a violation. And why it is so important here is that this is a case, a lot of domestic violence cases have a chance of not getting filed, especially if you have no criminal history, and especially if you have an attorney contact the DA before court, explain your side of the story. There's a decent chance that, depending on the circumstances, they will decide not to file charges against you. But if there's a violation of a protective order, then all of that is out the window. For the most part, if there's this additional crime, they will file charges against you when they might not have otherwise. And you will now have an additional charge, which could mean that your bail could be significantly increased. It also makes it much more difficult to get the charges dropped later on, even if the alleged victim is on your side. Example 2. Jack was arrested for domestic violence against his girlfriend, Emily. Initially, Jack didn't give a statement to the police. He had heard you shouldn't talk to cops, but now he regrets that because he's been doing some research online and he believes that he actually has a really strong case for self-defense. Jack has been wanting to explain to the police that Emily actually slapped him first, and he's been thinking about reaching out to the police department himself. But before he can do that, he gets a call from a number that he doesn't recognize. Jack, this is Detective Wilson. I'm following up on the incident from last Saturday. Do you have a moment to talk? Yes, Detective, I'm glad that you called. I wanted to explain what really happened. Go ahead, Jack. I'm listening. It was all self-defense. Look, I didn't want to get her in trouble at the time, but what happened is that Emily slapped me during our argument and then I pushed her. I was just defending myself. I see. Okay, so you were just defending yourself. Can you just walk me through, just so I know, just so I can put it in my report, hopefully get this whole thing just put behind you. Can you just explain to me exactly what happened after she attacked you and after she slapped you? Well, she slapped me and, I was angry. I pushed her away without even thinking about it. I didn't mean to hurt her. And look, I don't want her to get in trouble either. I know it was one slap. I knew she wasn't going to do it again. And this whole thing, it just blew up. Oh, so you knew that she probably wouldn't slap you again? Yeah, it was just a heat of the moment thing for her. I mean, I knew I probably could have walked away, but I was upset and she had just slapped me, and so, I pushed her. Okay, I understand. So you were defending yourself. She started it. She slapped you, and then you pushed her. So after you pushed her, then what happened? Well, she fell back. I didn't mean for her to fall to the ground. I just wanted to get her away from me. And then I guess the neighbors called the cops, and the next thing I'm in handcuffs. I should have explained what actually happened at the time. All right, Jack, thank you for your perspective. We'll take this into account in our investigation. Upon getting off the call, the detective sets to work in writing his supplemental report, beefing up the initial police report. Suspect claims self-defense, but admitted did not fear further attack. Had opportunity to leave situation. Okay, so in this example, Jack is thinking, hey, okay, she slapped me first. I need to make sure that the police have that information. If they had that information, maybe they wouldn't have arrested me in the first place, and I do want this case to be dropped. I want whoever's looking at this file to know that. But what he doesn't realize is that just because the other person attacked you first doesn't mean that you attacking them back is going to be considered self-defense. For self-defense, you can only use force to stop them from attacking you. So if they attacked you once and you attacked them once back, but you weren't afraid that they were going to attack you a second time, you didn't believe that they were going to do that, then that is not self-defense. Now, is that common sense? I'm not sure, but it is the law, and Jack doesn't know that. And what the detective is interested in on this call is locking Jack into a statement. And if the detective can lock him out of a defense because he didn't push her to stop an additional attack, then their case becomes a lot tighter. And so the detective has done everything that they set out to do, and probably then some, with this phone call. And Jack, thinking that he was going to make the situation better, actually made it a lot worse. Example 3. Karen was arrested for domestic violence against her boyfriend, Mike. Initially, when the police came out, Mike gave a detailed statement explaining that he had an argument with Karen during which she hit him. But he didn't realize that the cops were going to arrest her. He just figured that since they were out on a domestic violence call, if he didn't tell them that she had hit him, then they would probably arrest him. He didn't think that they were going to arrest her. And now he just wants this whole thing dropped. He doesn't want to testify against her. He doesn't want any part of this. And then he gets a call from No Caller ID. Mike, this is Detective Anderson. I'm following up on the incident from last week. Do you have a few minutes to talk? Yeah, I guess so. Great. I just wanted to check in and see how everything's going. Are you doing okay? Yeah, everything's fine. I mean, actually, I've been thinking about the situation and I think I might have exaggerated a little bit. Oh, how so, Mike? Well, Karen didn't really hit me. We were just arguing and I overreacted. She's apologized, I've apologized, and we've worked things out. We just want to move past it. I see. You know, Mike, that's quite a bit different from what you told us initially. Has anything changed since then? No. Look, I want these charges dropped. I realized that Karen's not violent. You know, she just gets frustrated sometimes, and we are both working on it. Mike, are you sure you're safe? Remember, we're here to help. I'm fine. Like I said, I'm fine. Really. Can we just drop this whole thing? All right, Mike. Well, thanks for talking with me. We'll be in touch if we need anything else. And look, Mike, if you're feeling unsafe, there are resources that we can hook you up with. Just let us know. As soon as he hangs up, the detective works on his supplemental report. Victim and suspect still in dating relationship. Victim has drastically changed statement, now denying any violence occurred. Expresses strong desire to drop charges. Given the initial report and this sudden change, there are serious concerns about victim's safety and ability to leave a potentially abusive situation. Okay, so this situation may seem a little silly because we have Mike, who's a guy, being treated as though he is a battered woman. But that is how the police and how the DA's office treat alleged victims generally. If you call them as the alleged victim, you say, look, I want to retract my statement. I want to take it back. I don't want charges to be filed. Often, instead of them really listening to you, listening to what you're saying and understanding it, instead they are viewing all of this through the lens that you are a domestic violence victim. And so you are being coerced or pressured, or you are afraid of the consequences to you. And we have this detective writing up this supplemental report that is now drawing even more attention to the case and potentially increasing the likelihood that charges will be filed here. Example 4. David was arrested for committing domestic violence against his wife, Laura. Now, the two of them have been together for a long time. They have 2 kids. And both of them regret their actions the night that David got arrested, and they really just want this whole thing dropped. They've already spent a big chunk of their savings bailing David out of jail, and neither one of them wants to get the other in trouble. They've both been doing research, and they've both been trying to figure out how to maximize the chances of this whole thing getting dropped. And then David gets a call from a detective. Hello, is this David? Yes, this is David. Can I ask who's calling? This is Detective Rodriguez calling. I'm following up on an incident from last week. Do you have a moment to talk? Oh, yes. Actually, I'm glad you called. Laura wants to drop the charges. The whole thing was just a big misunderstanding. I see. Well, I'd need to speak with Laura directly about that. Oh, that's perfect. She's right here. Laura, the detective's on the phone. Laura, hun, come tell him that you want to drop the charges. Hello? Laura, hi, this is Detective Rodriguez. Are you okay to speak freely right now? Yes, I'm fine. I want to drop the charges. This has all just been a misunderstanding. I understand, Laura. Laura, I need to ask you something important. Did you lie to police when you made your initial statement? No. I mean, look, I didn't lie. I just think that I didn't understand the situation at the time. All right, thank you for your time, Laura. We'll be in touch. The detective hangs up and he gets working on his supplemental report that he's going to attach to the police report. Suspect eagerly pushed victim to speak on phone. Victim claims misunderstanding but denies lying in initial report. Sounds nervous and potentially under duress. Now, situations like this one are very common. You know, you have a husband and wife, the police come out because of some domestic violence call that maybe one of you made to try to calm a situation down, maybe a neighbor called, whatever may be the case, but the two of you are together, right? Maybe the alleged victim even bonded you, the suspect, out. And the two of you are trying to work together to get this whole thing dropped because neither one of you wants the other to have a criminal record, right? Neither one of you wants to spend more money, more resources that could go to your kids and your family. So you're trying to figure out how to get this dropped. And if it looks like you are working too closely together like this, then again, this is often viewed by police, by prosecutors as more evidence of coercion. And these two people, Laura and David, if they've never been in this situation before and they don't know how it works, and a detective is calling them, it makes it seem like, okay, we could just DIY this. We can just use our common sense to address this situation, but they don't understand all of the nuances. They don't understand how the whole system is set up and how things that they might say or do will be viewed. And that can potentially make the case worse. Example 5. Tom was arrested for domestic violence against his wife, Sarah. But when he was getting arrested, he never got the chance to explain that Sarah has serious mental health issues. And he thinks that that's going to be probably pretty important to the police when they're making their decision as to what to do with this case. I mean, if she has serious mental health issues, he figures then they know that she's not going to be a reliable witness. And Tom has actually called the police station several times to try to give them this information, but he can never get a hold of anybody. But then he gets a call from a number that he doesn't recognize. Tom, this is Detective Johnson. I'm calling about the incident from last week. Do you have a moment? Yeah, I've been waiting for someone to call me back. Look, this whole thing is a misunderstanding. I never should have been arrested in the first place. I'm listening, Tom, and look, that's exactly why I'm calling. I just want to figure out what happened. What do you mean by misunderstanding? Look, Sarah has these mental health issues. She gets these episodes sometimes. That night she was having one of her moments and she lashed out. I was just trying to calm her down. I wanted to make sure you guys knew that. Oh, I see. I mean, that must be a lot to deal with. Can you elaborate a little bit on these mental health issues? She's bipolar. You know, sometimes she gets really paranoid and she thinks that I'm out to get her. All right. And Sarah's been diagnosed with bipolar disorder by a professional, right? Well, no, not officially, but it's pretty obvious. I mean, she's always up and down. I think she should get a psych evaluation. I mean, that's why this whole arrest thing is so ridiculous. I get it, Tom, and I understand. I'd be frustrated in your situation too. I mean, you're just doing the best you can, but that's why I'm here. Is there anything else you'd like to tell me? I want to make sure you guys know that Sarah doesn't want to press charges. She agrees that this was all a misunderstanding, and she's willing to get a psych evaluation if needed. All right, Tom, well, thanks for taking the time. We'll be in touch. After the call, the detective adds to his report. Suspect claims victim has undiagnosed bipolar disorder and wants to drop charges. Suspect attributes incident to victim's episode. Concerns about gaslighting and victim safety. Recommend immediate felony filing and protective order. Okay, so for all we know here, Tom could have been telling completely the truth, right? And if Sarah here has serious mental health issues and that caused this incident, then that is important information. But what he doesn't realize, and what a lot of people who find themselves in this situation arrested for domestic violence for the first time don't realize, is that everything that they do will be viewed through the lens of them being an abuser. There often is a time and a way to bring up a victim's mental health issues if that is what led to this situation, but it has to be done very carefully, and it definitely should not be done by the defendant directly. As a police officer, when you're looking at Tom already thinking he is an abuser, and then he's doing things that could be interpreted as things that an innocent person who doesn't really know what they're doing might do, or things that an abuser might do, you are much more likely to interpret all of this as Tom is an abuser. And so this is more evidence that they are going to potentially use against him. Now, what do all these situations have in common? Especially if they've never been in trouble before, if neither one of them has, they believe that talking to a police officer will help them. And domestic violence cases are different than a lot of other types of criminal cases because many times the alleged victim is on the suspect's side and does want the charges to be dropped. Because of that, people who find themselves in these situations tend to think, look, if only I can give my side of the story and the alleged victim's side of the story and give them all this information, then the police may drop the case. And sometimes the police will even lead you to believe that that's true. But what you should remember is that in all of these 5 cases, and in most domestic violence cases, answering the phone, talking to that detective can only make it worse and is not going to make it better. They're going to be looking for inconsistencies. They're going to be looking for evidence of coercion. And when the alleged victim changes their story, instead of thinking, hey, you know what, this is not a very strong case, we should drop this case, many times they do the opposite and they think there is some evidence of coercion here, this is a domestic violence situation, and we do want this case filed. In domestic violence cases, there is a chance that your case will get dropped before court if it was your very first time getting arrested. But the way to get it dropped before court and increase that likelihood is not to DIY and talk to the detective or talk to to the police and make more and more statements without really understanding how they operate. The way to do that is to have an attorney contact the DA before court and explain your side of things. If the victim wants to give a statement, let's make sure that whatever statement they're going to give is actually helpful. Let's not make things worse here. I hope you found this video helpful. If you do have a criminal case in California, feel free to give me a call. You can find my number down below. You can also book a consultation there. And if you did find it helpful, please don't forget to like, subscribe, ring the bell, and follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook.